the most exposed per capita to bonds, with Rhode Island a distant third. And yet, that's only 13.8% of the Connecticut budget, which we don't think is terribly well run. And our debt service on bonds is 10.1%. It's high. That's over $5,000 per person in town, and the average in Connecticut is $2,300 per person. So we're, even though we're borrowing at great rates, it's still a lot of debt. So I commend the Board of Selectmen for amping up the capital spending again to replace that and focus on current spending rather than just pushing everything down the line.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that.
And I'll just note that the future debt also includes items that we already have authorized but we haven't issued.
Right.
So even as we issue, if we didn't authorize any new debt, we would still have more debt for what we currently have on the table. So as we issue debt for those unauthorized bonds, the curve will still be coming down. So that's part of what I mean by that. So not new things necessarily on top of what we already have on the books.
And Bob, I do agree with you. The state at large does have a debt issue. One of the things that, and not to quibble, one of the things that a significant portion of our debt is.
We're very strong.
Yeah.
We're AAA, they're not.
Right.
We've got a hell of a rainy day fund.
Right.
We're a completely different position,
Yeah.
which I left out. That's absolutely true.
But also, we are in the midst of what is arguably a multi-generational expense, the high school.
Yes.
Right? And there will be generations that will not have to bear the cost of that in their tax base over time.
And you'll see that in the green.
I think it's interesting to note, too, that I think we funded it on a 20-year basis instead of a 30-year,
30-year
which would have
basis,
been
right.
more typical.
We typically
Depends.
do 20.
We typically
20
do
is
20.
typical. Going out to 30 is usually another decision that's made.
Okay, I thought previously schools,
30
but it's a
30
long time ago.
30
I thought
if
they
you
were
really
30-year.
If you really want to
Right.
smooth it out and you have some issues.
Right.
We made the commitment to save, I forgot what the amount was, but it was eight
over
8
2
million, or I don't know what it was in overall interest, so it was a huge.
Do you have that same chart where you break out the school and the town debt? I see you break out the high school debt.
We can do that.
Yeah,
Oh.
Something like
Absolutely,
that's
yeah,
floating
I have
around.
those numbers. Mhm.
just to make it even more difficult. But thank you.
Anything for you, John.
Thank you.
All right, just to sort of recap, because I'm not quite done yet, but the Board of Selectmen reduced department budgets by $440,000, capital budgets by over $1.1 million, department operating expenses without salaries decreased by 0.21%. The increase in salaries is 4.81, including reserve funding for the contracts expiring this coming June. Increased capital funding, state estimates are there. One thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, this budget does not include anything for OPEB funding. As you are aware, and you guys were part of the discussion and the agreement to move to an OPEB trust. We have $1.2 million set aside for that. The actuaries have said we do not need to fund it in this operating budget. That 1.2 gives us a great starting point for creating the trust. But I think at some point, not some point, next year, we're going to need to contemplate adding a line item in the budget for the OPEB trust. That is, if you guys don't decide to do something with what is looking to be a 1.3, right now, I think it was $1.3 million surplus in the medical account once again. And whether that holds through the balance of the year is anyone's guess. But anything that we did with some of those funds could be used to offset contributions from the Board of Ed and the town in next year's budget.
Can I grab just a small clarification and
Sure.
maybe a small question? The 1.2 million, that's the estimated actual OPEB cost for
No, the
this
1.2
upcoming-
is money we have already set aside.
Oh, that was the from the medical
Right.
fund that
Correct.
we've got to contribute now to an
Right.
OPEB.
Correct,
We
200,000
started with 200 and
from surplus in the last year, and then $1 million from the medical fund. So that the $1.2 million will be the initial contribution to the fund. in fiscal 2021. So that's why you do not see any OPEB request from either the Board of Ed or the town in the budgets that we're presenting
And
today.
then what's the expected actual OPEB costs?
28 million, somewhere in there?
No, I meant not the entire liability, but the actual dollars that we expect to spend out.
We're looking at a phase-in approach for 5 to 7 years. We haven't really determined what that is. As of this point, we're really still working on those numbers.
Okay, I've asked this question before. I think
Yeah.
you said they're intermingled in different accounts
Well,
right now, and it's not that easy to just tell.
Because we use pay-as-you-go today, we're going to continue to use pay-as-you-go until we get the fund to a point where it can start spinning off some money to
Yep.
diminish the pay-as-you-go.
Understandable. That's the
And currently, we're spending about $835,000 a year
That's- yeah.
to cover the OPEB costs.
That was our 2019 cost. So you'll still see those costs wrapped into the medical budget. Our intent is to have a separate budget item for those future costs. So
Yep. All right.
until that, from both the Board of Ed and the town, until that fund reaches a point where it can start to,
Okay. I don't want to
Generate
break
some
your
money.
rhythm too much.
Oh, no.
it's okay.
Great
Well, can I just add one quick question before
Sure.
we go to the next phase, which is where all the tax dollars go? How do we get a 25% increase in personal property increase overnight?
That's a question that Jen will be happy to answer for you.
Okay.
It's a complicated answer.
Thank you.
And some of it is being more diligent in chasing down the reports.
Okay.
Because the commercial folks are supposed to submit some of their
Accurate statements.
accurate statements. Thank you very much. So, okay, we talked at the beginning about mission, and again, I won't bore you to tears with this. We'll probably spend more time on this at the public hearing if it suits you well. But this is where the tax dollars go. Fire department, 3,500 calls in 2019. But more importantly, take a look at that graph on the right-hand side. Average response times throughout the community have gone down dramatically, particularly those in North Guilford. Police department, it's over 1,200 complaints. But more importantly, they continue to do regional collaboration, which takes costs out of the system. Because of the regional nature, we can share those costs, some of those things with other departments. The engineering department continues to identify projects and work on projects. The Falcon Road Chimney Corner Circle, we're currently have an RFP, not RFP, but we just signed a contract with a consulting firm. You can see those projects that are underway. Public Works, I'd love to tell this story. 49 square miles are one of the biggest land masses, towns in the state of Connecticut. 186 miles of road that are maintained throughout the year. And 3,600 catch basins have to be cleaned every year in order to remain in compliance with the MS4 state requirements, chip sealing, et cetera. Youth and Family Services, you can see the demand for services continues to be there in a variety of programs, as well as clinical services. Social services, they manage 20 programs, which are, most of them are state or federal programs, which give our residents access to funds that they need in order to survive. The town clerk, we were trying to figure this out. They're processing about 50 permits or deeds per day in that office, between marriage certificates, licenses, permits, and deeds. The assessor manages over 20 tax assistance programs. Health department, 721 inspections over the course of the year. The Guilford Free Library, 277,000 items in circulation last year, a 13% increase. You build something that's as good as that, people could continue to demand those kind of services. Park and Recreation, 20,000 participants in class and events. This one is the one I love, 34,000 meals served to seniors and Meals on Wheels over the last year. Economic development, we continue to work with Rex for the regional programs and the tourism. The parking agreement with St. George Church was recently signed, as well as their involvement as a liaison to land use departments for the business and real estate development here in town. With that, I'll entertain any questions. And thank you for your attention and for listening.
Well, I will reiterate the comments I made. Board of Education, I know most of us were at the workshops, department workshops, capital workshops, and presentations, and the amount of work that goes into this every year. It's literally hundreds of people, not just staff. We're talking about hundreds of volunteers that are on all the commissions and all the boards. So thank you for the presentation. I know we're going to be hearing this again. And I know if there's any, again, I would ask if there's any burning questions or anything that anyone has to ask from the board. You do that now. Otherwise, we'll be asking lots of questions, I'm sure, and getting clarifications in the meantime.
Do one quick one again.
John, go ahead.
So, medical benefits, it looked like they just went up slightly for the town, but it looked like they went down for the school.
That's a redistribution of the percentages because of the number of total contracts. We base that expense on the number of contracts. So the Board of Ed has less contracts this year than they did in the upcoming year than they did this year. People opting out, people not taking the medical, which then changes the distribution of the percentages. So we picked up a little bit while they went down.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, thank you for that reminder. I want to thank the entire staff for the work they've done to put this together, as well as the Board of Selectmen, who spent countless hours on working on this. As Brian McGlone says all the time, he says, you know, I'm just a pretty face. All the work gets done by a lot of other people. So, thank you.
Very well. Okay.
Next step.
Now that our Michael, how are we doing on time?
I just put my desk in, so
Oh,
not 2 hours.
I was gonna say we're well over the time. All right, so we'll just we're just about done. So committee reports, building permits. I did notice that it equaled.
They've fallen off.
We're almost where we were last year. So
Yeah.
that's just on the single
The
family.
year began with great encouragement.
Yes. If nothing on that, further on that, item number 9 is old business. My only question to that is a continuation of the status of the RFP for the auditor.
Bid opening was today.
Okay.
Three of you on the subcommittee should have received your packets. We do have a meeting scheduled for the
Great.
subcommittee to get together to determine our next steps, and so we are working through the process.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone on the subcommittee. No other item under old business, new business, public forum? No one? Yes, everyone went to bed. So if nothing else, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.